Merry Grizzmas, one and all. It is finally here after an off season of immaculate vibes being missed, of rookies being brought in to replace veterans, of all sorts of boredom in terms of coming up with hot takes. Finally, it is live basketball, meaningful basketball to discuss on this very merry Grizzmas edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Merry Grizzmas, one and all. It is wonderful to have you back with me here on Locked On Grizzlies. You'll notice I am without my co-host, Mr. DeMichael Cole. He's very busy this time of year, putting together presents of articles over the commercial appeal for good Grizzlies girls and boys. Oh, very excited for the season getting underway. But don't you fret, dear listener or viewer. DeMichael will be back with me to review Game 1 on the next episode of Locked On Grizzlies. But you got me for the next 30 minutes. Let's talk through this wonderful, unofficial holiday, but it should be a day off for everybody in Memphis, Tennessee. The Grizzlies are playing basketball once again. Thank you so much for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day. And thank you so much to our title sponsor for this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, Prize Picks. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. It's here, finally. After all this time of questioning how important D'Anthony Melton was, thinking about who in the world is going to replace Kyle Anderson, whether or not he needs to be replaced at all these questions about who's going to get extensions and will they make a trade, actual basketball to discuss. It couldn't have come soon enough, at least for me. I know that I personally, even back when I was the site manager at SB Nation's GrizzlyBearBlues.com, a very wonderful time. It's a chance for rebirth, right? It feels like everybody has a realistic shot and winning the championship, unless you're the San Antonio Spurs or the Utah Jazz or the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Orlando Magic. You know, somebody that doesn't necessarily think they have a chance. But there are 11 out of 15 teams in the Western Conference that 100% can talk themselves into being at least a play-in team. And then in the case of the Memphis Grizzlies, as has come out in the last couple of days from national outlets and local media folks, and then Grizzlies Twitter, which we'll talk more about later in the show, it has run the gauntlet from the 1 seed for the Grizzlies all the way down to the play-in and everything in between where Memphis is going to finish. And I think that says more about the Western Conference than it does the Memphis Grizzlies, just how wide open and competitive this thing has the potential to be. But if they were playing the games based off of immaculate vibes, the Grizzlies would be the 1 seed, and they are back in action tonight against the New York Knicks. And before I get to my Grizzmas wish list, because I've been a very good boy this year. I don't know about you guys, but I've been a very good boy this year when it comes to following the Grizzlies. I've been washing my Zach Randolph cup, making sure that I can still use it for the Grizzlies games. I have been listening to all the various great podcasts and reading all the great articles. I have been making sure I understood what Jitty meant and washing my Jitty hoodie religiously. I am prepared to tell Grizzmas, Santi Claus, I am hopeful that my wishes will come true. And before I give you those wishes, I do want to preview the game at large. It is only one of 82. I do think that's important. But obviously, it's the first one. You want to get the first one right, so to speak. And it would be interesting to see how the Grizzlies line up, given the injury report. And I think that's an important place to start off with the Grizzlies at this time, because the injury report had a lot more names on it than I think people anticipated, or at least one more name than we anticipated. The injury report comes out the day before the game, usually, give or take. And Dillon Brooks, doubtful with thigh soreness. That is mildly surprising, and it makes the task of the Grizzlies defense that much more difficult. We'll talk more about that here momentarily. Also brings in the question, who the heck is going to start for this team, right? You already wondered if it was Santi Aldama. Now you have to add somebody on the wing. And Zaire Williams has already been listed as out due to right knee soreness. We also know, thanks to Michael Cole, my co-host from the Commercial Appeal, that he's battling a non-COVID related illness, a respiratory illness. So he was very unlikely to play in this game. Danny Green, of course, coming back from knee surgery. They don't expect to see him until perhaps the spring. And then Jaren Jackson Jr., on our last episode, we talked about how he's working his way back into 5-on-5 play, but that's still, 2 weeks away roughly. And then you do a week or so of that, and that's when you get into actually playing. Excuse me. So maybe on the November 18th or 19th episode of Locked On Grizzlies, we're talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. returning. Not there yet. The surprise on the list was Dillon Brooks. And it's concerning for me, not necessarily in terms of the Grizzlies losing, but I do think it's going to make the work harder for the team, because now you've got your best defender and Dillon Brooks likely out. Doubtful means, less or roughly 25% chance that he plays. RJ Barrett, not the most efficient scoring wing in the NBA, but a terror in terms of being able to create his own shot and score. You've got the newly minted Jalen Brunson, over $100 million contract signed with the Knicks. He's in the mix. You've got other threats on that perimeter, Evan Fournier, Quentin Grimes, obviously Emmanuel Quickley. There are names, Derrick Rose, Memphis fans very familiar with, that can put the ball in the bucket for this Knicks team. Maybe not the most efficient clip, but they have the physical capacity to do it. So I'm intrigued by how they are going to respond in terms of the starting lineup. John Conchar makes the most sense, but maybe they go David Roddy. Maybe they go Jake LaRavia. Maybe they allow one of these younger players to get a chance to swing for the fence a little bit. And in terms of defense, they have different frames. Roddy has more, musculature to his build. Obviously, LaRavia, a little bit taller, a little bit longer. So they all bring different things to the fold. Conchar starting opening night, which is a crazy sentence to say out loud, is probably the most likely result here. And it will make the Grizzlies in a position to where Conchar at least knows his defensive assignment. We know he'll attack the glass. He has the ability to shoot the three, but will he be able to replicate the defense of Dillon Brooks? You could argue nobody really on the roster can replicate the defensive presence of Dillon Brooks, and maybe that is something that Taylor Jenkins will have in mind. But with Dillon Brooks out, how you look at the rotation, right? How the rotation plays out. Because if Conchar starts, you got Tyus Jones, Brandon Clark coming off the bench, obviously. Do you play both Roddy and LaRavia? Do you have Xavier Tillman be your 10th man? How do you go about figuring out who that next guy is that replaces Dillon Brooks in terms of rotation minutes? Because it's obviously not going to be any of the guys that are on that injured list. Santi Aldama, of course, being that starter, it'll be really fascinating to watch what he does. But one of the most interesting things about this Knicks game, now that Dillon Brooks is doubtful, assuming he doesn't play, is whatever Ja Morant's scoring average is, take the over, or the scoring over-under is, take the over, because he is going to take a ton of shots. He's not going to be impeded by Dillon. Not that Dillon does that consistently, maybe a little bit, but the shot attempts of Dillon, if Conchar is the starter, it's not like Conchar is going to start chucking. We've talked about how he needs to increase his usage, look for his shot more. He's not going to jump into the deep end of the pool without floaties on. He is going to continue to kind of ease in and dip his toes in the increased shot attempt area. So that means Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, both, if the Grizzlies are going to win this game, are going to be due for big nights, and I would expect both of them to do just that. I also look forward to seeing what Tyus Jones and Brandon Clark do, because they are the two clear guys in that second unit that are going to make that thing tick. How they pair alongside Steven Adams, how they look next to Ja Morant if it's Tyus Jones playing alongside Ja. early in the season, there's a lot of wrinkles and a lot of adjustments that you're really kind of keying in on. It's also your first attempt to really get a game plan for a guy like Julius Randle, who 2 seasons ago was an all NBA-esque player, definitely had a less efficient, less successful season in 2021, 2022. Can he bounce back? Does Obi Toppin of Dayton, for the last 2 years he's been with the Knicks, but he played for Dayton, was a lottery pick for the Knicks years ago. Does he get more run? There's lots of uncertainty around Mitchell Robinson returning to the Knicks as a big man, good rim protector, good rebounder. What is he going to be able to provide this New York team that could limit Ja Morant's effectiveness, with Dillon Brooks being another dribble creator off the bench, or off the bounce, that can score the basketball, can shoot the three in theory, at least is willing to shoot the three. How all this fits is going to be fascinating to watch play out. It's the first little bit of adversity early in the campaign. The Knicks don't figure to be better than the Memphis Grizzlies, but they have the talent to hang in this game, especially if their defensive spark plug in Dillon Brooks is not on the floor. So I would still take the Grizzlies in this one because they have the superior players in Bane and Morant, but don't be surprised if there's some lulls where you're wondering what the heck's going on, especially when Morant and Bane aren't on the floor. And my main coaching point would be for Taylor Jenkins to ensure that the time that Ja and Bane are off the floor is 0. Together, they both should never be off the floor. One or the other. If Ja is off the floor, Bane should be on. If Bane's on the floor, or off the floor, Ja should be on. There should never be a point where one of those two dudes is not playing basketball for the Memphis Grizzlies with Dillon Brooks out. They just can't afford it in terms of offensive firepower. Things that you can afford to do are get involved with Prize Picks. I am a big fan of Prize Picks. I've really enjoyed getting to check out that app. They do tremendous work over there, a lot of fun, different take on daily fantasy. I enjoy the entries and the player projections, the more or less aspect of things, like taking more than 30.5 points for Ja Morant. I would personally do that going into this game. More than 3.5 made threes for Desmond Bane. I think that's very realistic. More than 9.5 rebounds for Steven Adams. That would be a massive win. And if you lace and piece all those things together, then you have a real fun night watching the Grizzlies alongside Prize Picks. How does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will go score more or less than their Prize Pick projection, grab more or less rebounds, so on and so forth. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the available projections. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes the NBA, NFL, MLB, all the way through the WNBA, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, even cricket. Literally almost every sport under the sun is eligible under Prize Picks. It's safe with fast withdrawals, and it's currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Friendly reminder that it is indeed Grizzmas time, right? And it's a time to be grateful for this Grizzlies game against the Knicks. Again, if I had to pick a winner, it would be the Grizzlies by 5 or so, maybe a 114 to 109 affair is in order. I could see that being very much a reality. I believe the Knicks would probably cover in that situation. Last time I checked, the Grizzlies were 6.5 point favorites. But at the same time, again, without Dillon Brooks, I do think that will disrupt the defensive energy of Memphis, and they'll have to find their footing in terms of shot creation. One of the strengths of Dillon Brooks is the ability to score for himself when others are not willing or able to do so. That's gone if Dillon is out. So assuming Dillon doesn't play, they're going to have to find that somewhere, and that could create some lulls in the offense. So 114 to 109 Grizzlies win is my official prediction. But I'm in the spirit of giving. I am going to give you my Grizzmas wishes. Again, like I said earlier in the show, I've been a good Grizzlies boy. I have read up on all the inner workings of this organization. I am learned in the Grizz Next Gen. I completely and totally support Grizzmas. It is one of my favorite holidays, and this is my Grizzmas wish list. First and foremost, Grizzmas wish number one. I want to see improved shooting, like my wonderful co-host Michael Cole talked about on the last episode of Locked On Grizzlies. This team, it's been the Achilles heel of the Memphis Grizzlies for a long time. Going all the way back to the beginnings of the grit and grind era. If they only had one shooter, what amazing things could have been. They weren't, unfortunately, and that was an Achilles heel for that great era of Grizzlies basketball. As great as the Grizzlies offense has been, in terms of offensive rating, they were in the top 5 in the NBA last season. They could be better because of their three-point shooting being such a struggle. They were among NBA teams 17th in three-point percentage. They were at 35.3%. They only took 32.73s a game. I say only, but that was 23rd in the National Basketball Association. It just wasn't a strength of their game. So much of the reason that they scored so many points was the fact that they got out in transition. They ran. They created offense off of turnovers. And maybe that is more possible than we initially thought when they got rid of or let walk Kyle Anderson in free agency, when they traded the Anthony Melton, who made his Philadelphia 76ers debut last night. When they traded Melton as part of that first round further draft pick acquisition, bringing in Danny Green, all of that happens, and you think that they're going to have to change the way that they score. And that's true to an extent still because of the playoffs, right? You're going to have to, while the game slowing down in the postseason is a bit of a myth, there is some truth to it in terms of having to create half-court offense and score in those sets. So spacing, obviously, is one of the more essential tools in that process. And if you don't have the ability to shoot the basketball, you lack spacing. So on my Grizzmas wish list, pretty please bring shooting. More improved shooting, increased shot attempts for John Conchar, who has shown the ability to convert threes, just not at a very high clip, right? He shot 41% from three last season, but it was on 1.8 shots per game. That's not enough. Tyus Jones in continued success from three, 39% from beyond the arc, but only on 2.8 attempts. So increased usage, increased opportunity, improved percentages for guys like a Dylan Brooks, who shot 31% from three. Jaren Jackson Jr. shot 32% when he returns. You want to see growth in those numbers, and you want to see growth in usage for the guys, that at least there's some evidence that they can hit the three. Second item on my Grizzmas wish list. Pretty please make this happen. I would really like to see it. Ja Morant. The continued growth of him as a defender. Goodness gracious, what value that would bring. All these guys and gals picking Ja Morant to be in the top 3, the top 5 of MVP voting, having him number 1 like Michael Pena did of the Ringer, being in a position to say that the Grizzlies are going to make the NBA Finals, like Ramona Shelburne of ESPN said. All that will occur if Ja Morant is an improved defensive player. And he's never going to be Gary Payton II. He's never going to be, I'd be surprised if he was a Dylan Brooks. He's never going to be an above average to very good defensive player on the ball consistently, because his usage offensively is just so high. The Memphis Grizzlies need him to be something more than what is capable for him defensively. They really, really have to have him be on the ball, off the ball, scoring option, threat. That matters more than him being some lockdown defender. But if he cannot be a liability there, and he's shown growth in that area, not just in this preseason, but before this preseason, he was better in terms of steal percentage. He was better in terms of deflections. He showed greater effort and energy on blocks, chase down plays, being in a position to stay in front of shooters more. He is growing in that area. If he can maintain that growth curve, get better this season, in addition to continuing to be the scoring threat that he is. Adding a mid-range jumper would be terrifying for the NBA offensively. But if Morant becomes a better two-way player, that puts him in the MVP conversation more legitimately, longer than just for a hot month of scoring to start the season, which I think Ja is more than capable of doing. It puts him in a position where he can say, I am not just the most explosive athlete in the NBA. I am not just a human highlight reel. I am not just someone with a vast bag of offensive basketball talent and skill. I can do this on the other end too. I can help my team make winning plays on the defensive end. If he can show that on an almost nightly basis, he is one of the top 5 players in the National Basketball Association. There's no doubt in my mind. He's already top 10. And he isn't a defensive liability, but he's also not a defensive strength. If he can continue to lean toward the strength side of things, continue to improve his game, and show real understanding of defensive scheme. It's not because he's not smart enough. He has an elite basketball IQ, one of the best in the NBA. Draymond Green and others have discussed it. Ja Morant understands it's the ability to take what he knows and apply it physically, which can be a challenge given how much is expected of him offensively. If he can continue to add to that workload, goodness gracious, the things the Grizzlies can do. So that would be my second item. Pretty please. I want better shooting, and I want Ja Morant to continue to show growth as a defensive player while maintaining his offensive importance. In the final segment, I will give you my final wish for all of Grizz Nation on this very Merry Grizzmas. But first, thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. Now make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result, Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the entire NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. When we come back, my final Grizzmas wish on this wonderful Grizzmas holiday. You're listening to Locked On Grizzlies. Do not go anywhere. Merry Grizzmas one more time. It never gets old. I'm sorry. I've just enjoyed being here with you on this very special day. The Memphis Grizzlies take on the New York Knicks tonight, and it's going to be amazing. DeMichael Cole at the Commercial Appeal will have you covered in terms of the beat, and then he'll be on here with me breaking down the game for our next episode of Locked On Grizzlies. So make sure you don't miss that. The Thursday episode will be a terrific one to make sure that you're catching. But my final Christmas wish, right? Oh, pretty please. I hope Santa Claus brings this. I want improved shooting. I want Ja Morant to continue to grow as a defender. And my third Christmas wish is for all of Grizz Nation to get along. On Tuesday, it was as if the Grizzlies fans on Twitter were in midseason form, being angry at one another for projections and hot takes in terms of where the team's going to finish, being nervous about losing Jaren Jackson Jr. for an extended period of time automatically makes you the enemy in some situations, it seems. Being hesitant to take a team that got younger, that was the second seed overall last year, and assuming they're going to continue to ascend the NBA. There's only one more spot to go, ladies and gentlemen. There's only one more place to be. To say that that's all just, a terrible way to look at it and not be very kind. Kindness, Grizzlies fans. Don't take for granted the immaculate vibes that the franchise has. Apply them to yourselves. The team is as fun as they've ever been to watch. I've been watching this team for over a decade now. I've been following them. I've been writing about them. I've been podcasting about them. I have seen highs and lows, the peaks and the valleys, the ebbs and the flows. This is the most fun time to be a Grizzlies fan ever. There's never been a player like Ja Morant on this team, ever. And I am a grit and grind truther. You will find nobody more loyal to Mike, Tony, Mark, and Zach than me. But they're fun. They're young. They don't know any better. That's one of the best parts of the audacity of Ja Morant. No, Ja Morant shouldn't be doing these things, but he's doing them, and who's going to stop him? It's so fun to see. Golden State Warriors beat them. That's great. Golden State was supposed to. They stood and spat in the face of the champs and they said, we want more. And the Golden State Warriors put them down, but they stood face to face and toe to toe in the insurmountable odds, and they fought back. They flew up and down the floor, through the air. They seemed to levitate, not just while playing, but on the bench. They truly enjoy one another. It is such a remarkable, happy thing to see post-game interviews where these guys photobomb and camera bomb and they pose and they laugh and they hug. You don't see that from day-to-day ops in professional sports. You just don't. The Grizzlies fans are so lucky. I mentioned this the other day on this show. They are so fortunate to be in a spot where lightning has struck twice. I lived in Memphis from 2011 to 2014, the height of grit and grind. I got to experience it. I got to live it. It was real. It was emotional. It was such a tremendous connection. I was so happy to be a person living in that city, having the chance to follow that team. I was fortunate. And you're getting that same thing again. To have Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark, they are all Grizzlies. They have known nothing else in the NBA stratosphere. All they know is Memphis. They love Memphis. They have come to love it. They've made it their home. They've established the identity of what it means to be a Memphis Grizzlies basketball player. The culture is strong. And they're entering another season. They could be the 1 seed. They could make the NBA Finals. No one would be surprised. But you also have to take that good with the bad. The shooting is still a concern. There's questions there. You have to wonder what these younger players that are going to be called upon at some point, will they be able to answer the call? Zaire Williams is still a young player. Yes, he has grown, but this time last year we were talking about him being a project. And now he's going to be the sixth man scoring savior. It's okay to question that. That doesn't mean that somebody is not a Grizzlies fan. That just means that they're using their heads. But that doesn't mean that Zaire can't answer that call. To the credit of the Grizzlies, they have almost every single time, whether it's development, whether it's coaching, these guys buck the trend. They are the exception to this point. Could this be the year that that fever breaks? Could year 4 be the time that Memphis comes back down to reality? Maybe. It's possible. It's worth having conversations about. I'm not going to yell at someone that has those concerns, but I will also say to you right now that I am done betting against them. I'm done. They have not necessarily proven me wrong, but they have shown that they are capable of far more than everybody except for folks in that locker room and in that organization have thought they were capable of for 3 straight years. From the play-in and the bubble to winning the first actual play-in tournament, being a team that wouldn't have made the playoffs originally and winning the play-in tournament, to going and making the second round of the playoffs as one of the youngest teams in the NBA. They are in rarefied air. They're fun. They enjoy one another, and they're not going anywhere for a long time. Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark, they're going to be around for the next few years. That core is here. So enjoy it. That's my final wish to you on this Grizzmas day. Find the great happiness in the journey. Nobody knows. You could be a fan and say you want them to be the 1 seed. You could be a fan and say that they're going to be in the play-in. Who knows? You make your best guess with your mind and your heart and your spirit, however you take in the game, and you have those conversations, but don't be personal. Don't be hard on one another. Enjoy this ride together. Because again, for the second time in a decade, which is unheard of, unfathomable, a completely different group of players is doing something similar to the previous era. They are taking the minds and hearts of the fans in the city and they're running with it. It is a remarkable time to be a Grizzlies fan, even with the flaws of the roster, even with the issues that are legitimate to ask about. have conversations about, do podcast episodes about. There is still space for joy. Do not allow that to be sucked away. This is a fun team. It's a good team, a team that is primed to continue to grow. Enjoy that journey. That is my third Grizzmas wish to you on this Grizzmas day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA. The NBA season is here, and our local NBA experts and insiders have you covered on and off the court all season long. All the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's available on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get podcasts. Next time you log in on Locked On Grizzlies, DeMichael Cole will be back with me. We will be breaking down Grizzlies Knicks from every possible direction, the good, the bad, the ugly, hopefully celebrating the first Grizzlies win of the season, reminding you that the sky will not be falling if it is the first Grizzlies loss. It is game 1 of 82, but hopefully you'll be joining us to talk and listen and enjoy this Grizzlies team, not just in our first recap episode, but all through the upcoming Memphis Grizzlies season. It is truly a fun time to be here with you on Locked On Grizzlies. I am so grateful for DeMichael as my co-host. I'm so grateful for you listening, so grateful to the Locked On Network for this opportunity. I'm Joe Mullinax. I am happy to be here. Merry Grizzmas, everyone. It is Grizzlies basketball time. Stay on the entire season long. Until next time, this is Locked On Grizzlies.